very warm welcome to all participants and all the IAPA members and executive. The Honorable Mr. Professor M.R. Khairul Muluk SS, MSE, the Chairman of IAPA, Prof. Agus Pramusinto, and all the seniors here in IAPA, Pak Oscar, the General Secretary of the IAPA, and special welcome to our honorable speakers, Prof. Alex P. Brillantes, PhD from the Philippines, Dr. Laltan Saga, PhD from India, and
Thank you.
Indri Dwi Aprilianti, PhD from UGM, and all distinguished participants. Let us express our gratitude that we are able to gather virtually today for the IAPA webinar series with the very timely topics, adaptive governance in an era of global crisis. We are currently navigating what experts call as polycrisis, especially due to the war today and of course the disruptive era today and the digital revolution era. This polycrisis is a convergence of geopolitical shift, digital disruption, as well as environmental urgency that defies traditional solution. In this volatile landscape, business as usual is no longer an option, but the survival of our public institution now rests on one pillar, namely adaptability. I'm Sulika Asmorwati, professor in Policy and Development Management in Airlangga University. You may call me Ika for short, and I'm honored to serve as your moderator for today's event. Over the next few hours, we will synthesize insight from the Philippines and India and of course Indonesia to redefine the architecture of governance for this era of crisis and uncertainty. I do hope that we can all follow the session smoothly from the opening remarks to the closing photo session later on. Without further delay, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Khairul Muluk, the chairman of the IAPA, to deliver the opening remarks. The screen is yours, Prof. Muluk.
Thank you, Prof. Ika. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Distinguished speakers, respected colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Indonesian Association for Public Administrations, it is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you to the IAPA Webinar Series 2026. This is episode 5, Adaptive Governance in an Era of Global Crisis. In beginning this webinar, allow me to begin with a short verses. Short verses means actually Malaya Pantun. This is Indonesian tradition. Yeah. Ke pulau seberang naik perahu, angin laut, mantap. Angin laut berhembus perlahan.
Cakep.
Di tengah krisis dunia yang baru, kita beradaptasi dengan tata kelola berketahanan.
Cakep.
Now in English. Across the archipelago, tides still flow. Amid a complexity and uncertain tides, in times of polycrisis, we adapt and grow. Through adaptive governance, resilience will rise. It needs 2 days to thinking about the verses, to make pantun. This pantun reflects the essence of our discussions today, how governance must continuously evolve in the face of complexity, uncertainty, and interconnected global crisis. In these occasions, allow me to extend my highest appreciation to our distinguished speakers, Professor Alex Brillantes from Philippines, Dr. Laltan Sanga from India, Dr. Indri Dwi Aprilianti from Indonesia, for generously sharing their expertise and perspectives. We are also honored to have Professor Sulika Asmorwati as our moderator, who will guide today's discussions. Usually we have a policy brief after these discussions. Honorable colleagues, today we are confronted with a series of global crises that are not only simultaneously but deeply interconnected, ranging from geopolitical tensions and energy disruptions to climate change and global economic uncertainty. These dynamics create what many scholars describe as polycrisis, what Bu Ika said, where the interactions among crises amplifies their impacts and increases uncertainty in governance. In such a context, governments and public bureaucracies are required not only to respond, but to adapt continuously. This is where the concept of adaptive governance become highly relevant. Adaptive governance refers to the capacity of governance systems to adjust policies and strategies in response to changing environments, to learn from experience and feedback, to coordinate across sectors and levels of government, to operate effectively under conditions of uncertainty. It represents a shift from rigid, rule-based administrations toward flexible, learning-oriented, and collaborative governance. Importantly, adaptive governance is not merely a technical solution. Usually, many sector thinks about only this one. It is a transformational approach to how the state engage with the complexity. I hope that these discussions uh, particularly important in the context of countries like Indonesia. As a decentralized and diverse archipelagic nation, Indonesia faces governance challenges that require three things. First, strong coordination between central and local governments. Second one, institutional flexibility at the local level. And the third one, policy coherence across sectors. This is our problem usually. Adaptive governance must be understood not only at the national level, but also as a local capability, where innovation, responsiveness, and contextual solutions emerge. Today's webinar brings together international and national perspective, allowing us to learn from diverse experiences and institutional contexts. Through engagement with global networks such as IAPA, Eastern Regional Organization for Public Administrations, which Prof. Alec as a SecGen, as well as a broader academic communities in Asia and beyond, we can enrich our understanding of how adaptive governance is practiced across different settings. This is essential because governance innovation often emerge from shared learning and comparative insights. I think this is our main message why this webinar conducted today. I want to close my remarks with another pantun. Ya. Pagi hari memetik melati,
Cakep.
harumnya sampai ke penjuru negeri.
Cakep.
Dengan
Cakep.
kolaborasi dan inovasi yang berarti, kita bangun
Cakep.
governance yang adaptif dan lestari. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Prof. Muluk, the chairman, for such inspiring remarks. May this serve as a great start of our discussion today. As I can highlight, Prof. Muluk mentioned that polycrisis is not only Earth's bureaucracy to respond, but has to be more adaptable. And the capacity of government require us to respond and adjust policy with the current pressure, I think. Okay, before we start, I would like to remind everyone for some technical point. Please keep your microphone mute during the presentation session. The question and answer session will be take place after all presentation. And kindly submit your question directly later by raise your hand or via chat box is also fine, and I will read them aloud. Now let's us welcome our first speaker, Professor Alex B. Brillantes, PhD, Good morning, Prof. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your always excellent views.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh,
Yeah.
I may be surprised I'm the first speaker, but of course,
Yeah.
I'm already.
And I will introduce you as first, Prof. Is that all
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah. Terima kasih
Yeah.
banyak. Sorry.
Okay, Prof. Alex Pibrantes, PhD, is a professor in public administration and governance at the University of the Philippines, the National College of Public Administration and Governance, where he also previously served as a dean. He earned his PhD in public administration from the University of the Philippines and widely recognized as a leading expert in local governance, decentralization, and public policy in Southeast Asia. In addition to his academic role, he served as a consultant for many international organizations such as UNDP, Asian, and the World Bank, etc. And with his extensive expertise, we will gain, of course, valuable insight into how adaptive governance is practiced in the face of global crisis. Please join me in welcoming Prof. Alex, and you have 20 minutes, Prof. The floor
Okay.
is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ika. So 20 minutes, I shall stick within time. And please let me know if I have about last 3 minutes, so I'll be able to wrap up now. Okay, it's always so good to be with you guys, our friends in the region. We in the Philippines have very, very special relations with Indonesia and all of us in the ASEAN, including Thailand and Singapore. So thank you very much, IAPA. And what I shall do, and of course, special shout out, of course, to Dr. Muluk, Dr. Oscar, and my best friend Agus from Osinto. No, and as I said earlier, we have many secrets together. Okay, but they're good secrets. Okay, so let me now share with you my screen. Okay, so if you can, I think it's okay, right? Okay, so what I will do now, dear friends, is gee, what happened now? See, I'm so bad at these things. Can you see my screen? No. Oh no. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Oh,
can see.
so how can I see it now? There you are. Can you see it still?
Well,
Okay, okay, I will put it full screen, right? Okay. Uh, can you see it, my friend?
Yes, it's clear,
Yep.
Prof.
that's okay.
So maybe I should just get out for a while because I think I made a mistake. Sorry, you can okay. Let me share it again. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can use my time. My time is already ticking. But that's okay. I will so I'll share my screen and then go here. Okay. And can you see it now?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. So anyway, when we talk about adaptive governance, our topic for today, we really talk about it's very, very relevant to us today, especially as we speak, even in our quick conversations earlier, we talk about the fact that we really live through a poly crisis. And Ika, you have said it, you have mentioned very well that indeed this poly crisis. And I just put this because I'm very, very grateful to IAPA. We've been a partner with you guys for the past so many years, more than a decade now, and we're all growing old together. And as Mamika mentioned, we already belong. We are the older ones already, and we have the younger people coming in, which I think is very, very good. I must mention Carl, also from the Philippines, and of course some other colleagues of mine here. Okay, so I just put this about our continued partnership with you guys at the University of Gajah Europa AGPA Conference, IAPA, and of course the doctoral conference that we had, of course, at one point there in Makassar, and then of course in Sulawesi, of course that's where we met your mayor, and of course I mentioned Thailand because at one point he's a good friend of ours. His name is uh, Ma'am Sida has been with us, and of course our good friends from Thailand. All of this is the importance of us working together, sharing. What's this is now? Can I? Doesn't move now. My slide doesn't move now. Uh, there. Yeah, okay. Sharing our experiences. So I mentioned Indonesia, I mentioned Thailand, and of course with even Singapore. We're very happy. We worked with Kenneth Sim. He came to the Philippines. We brought some of our students to Singapore, all to learn from each other. As we always say, 1+1 = 3. It's really, and I learned this from you guys in Indonesia. We talk about synergy, the synthesis of energy. we must not live by ourselves, no? And I mentioned this because Kenneth Sim has been here, and we continue to be working with all of us within the context of responsive public administration. I like these pillars of the Chandler Institute. I always used it because for me the 7 pillars about responsive public administration. But I always like the last one because it talks about the importance of helping people rise, helping people rise. If you look at this, at the end of the day, we always ask the question, for whom? For whom is public administration? And obviously, it is for the people, for the poor, for the next generation. Even as we're talking about this now, this global crisis, I think the leaders of today, globally and locally, should always remember that we have a responsibility to the next generation. And these are our children. I have 4 grandchildren. I sometimes wonder what kind of a world are we leaving them. But equally important, apart from the next generation, the first thing, of course, is the poor people, the vulnerable, those who are how to say, those the poor, the vulnerable. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Slide doesn't work. Gee, there's something wrong with this. Oh, did you touch something there, guys? Ika? Oh,
No, bro.
yeah,
Can you
because
just enter or no?
yeah, enter. No, yeah,
Yeah.
because earlier there. Okay,
Yeah.
anyway, so okay, there you are. So this is a very quick outline. Within the next 15 minutes, I'll be done. Taking off from Ika said, what is the role? Our role as government, our role as people in government in the poly crisis. Are we part of the solution or are we part of the problem? I think we should face it because many times we in governance are really part of the solution, but many times they think we are part of the problem. So how do we navigate the poly crisis? And it goes beyond stability, the need for agility. Again, Ika mentioned that about the importance of we in governance being able to be agile, no? And we'll talk about the core features of adaptive governments. And I would like to frame it in the framework of what Carl and I have been talking about for the longest time. About we call it 5 E's in an A. Yes, we are only managers, economy, efficiency, effectiveness. But more than that, we should think of equity. We should think of the next generation. We should think of the poor. And finally, we should be agile. We should be agile. We should be adaptive. And I use as an experience here the pandemic. But of course, going beyond that. Ika mentioned the importance of the poly crisis within the context of the environment, the pandemic, AI, so much. And I'll just have some discussion on Thailand, Indonesia, the Philippines, and of course, Vietnam. Okay. So all of us have heard about VUCA, no? Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and we are all living in this. And later on, I'll say about why it is still relevant. Why VUCA is still relevant, but another kind of VUCA. That is why we are here today. No, if you look at this, floods in Vietnam, dry earth, the global warming, it's not really a pretty picture as we speak now. And as if that were not enough, you have now this threat of nuclear war. I mean, it's actually a very real consideration now that we're all talking about now. What's happening right now in Iran and the United States. So apart from VUCA, people talk about tuna, turbulent, uncertain, novel, ambiguous. People talk about Bani. I remember Pansukim talking about this sometimes. Brittle, anxious, nonlinear, incomprehensible. And of course, Dr. Pansukim again talked about this when we were in at ASPA about 2 weeks ago. He said PUMO rather, positive, polarized, unthinkable, metamorphic, and overrated. The whole idea, dear friends, is that the state of the world today is not exactly the best. And what is going on is we should be able to our structures of governance should be able to respond. Our topic for today, when we talk about the role of governance, the role of public administration in responding to this poly crisis, and I think our theme today talks about us the need to be adaptive, which is what we add in our own 5 E's in an A. When we look, the last A is really about agility and adaptive. Question: are we ready? Question: are the forces, if you may, of the bureaucracy helping us to be more adaptive, or because of the bureaucracy being something that's so staid, something that doesn't move, it becomes in fact the obstacle to addressing this poly crisis. I'm sure all of you have heard of Noam Chomsky. I used to listen I was a graduate student at the University of Hawaii. I think Ika mentioned, yeah. And I would always listen to Noam Chomsky when I was in Hawaii. And I really love this guy. He's about 93 years old now. Noam is about 93, I mean, he's about 97 right now. But he talks about this poly crisis, but he talks about it within the context of something that has never happened before in history, and it will never again, unless we are now facing what he calls a virtual extinction of our species. That's why it's called virtual extinction by crisis. And the world is facing a confluence of three major crises that threaten the survival of humanity, and the need for international solidarity and education. The next slide which, goodness, what is this? There you are. So I already mentioned about the bulletin of concern atomic science. Apart from these things that are happening, you have this threat of nuclear war that really goes to the heart of what we're talking about, our existential crisis. Existential crisis, crisis to our existence. And what does Noam Chomsky say? Noam Chomsky says that, hey, global warming, nuclear war, deteriorating democracy, and the only hope, that's why we are here today. Thank you, IAPA, for gathering us again to continue this conversation. The only hope to dealing with this is through internationalism, solidarity, education. Why? That's the reason for IAPA. That's the reason for PSPA. That's the reason for Europa. Solidarity, education, and engage informed population dedicated to the opportunities that do exist to deal with this. That's why we are here today. And this is something that Noam Chomsky said, but people who know that there is an existential threat to our uh, to our see, even my computer doesn't seem to okay, let's see now. Okay, there you are. So the role of PA in a poly crisis. The world is, as I said, facing a confluence of multiple challenges, including geopolitical tensions, Iran, Iraq, US, climate change, governance issues, our province right now. And then the theory and practice of public administration. We all can have nice theories, but at the end of the day, are these theories implementable? No, that's why. So one question that we always ask is, at the end of the day, governance for whom? For whom is public administration? For whom is adaptive governance? Of course, you've all heard about John Locke, Rousseau, etc., who talk about the social contract, wherein you've given enormous authority to our government. But for whom do they use that for? And I think this question is very, very relevant if you look at what's going on right now in the United States. What is the power being used for in Iran? So traditional public administration fails today because it's a web of so we have to go beyond traditional public administration. When we talk about the poly crisis, it is a web of interconnected problems where the whole is more dangerous than the sum of its parts. The supply chain, the oil, Hormuz, we're all familiar with that. The failure of silos, the traditional silo mentality, wherein people in government just think of their own respective areas without us coming together. And I think Ika also mentioned that in her remarks, no? And the failure of silos. We have to work. People talk about collaborative governance. A lot of this is somehow almost jargonistic, but at the end of the day, it's so true. And that's why we have adaptive governance. When we talk about the importance, no, of multi-scalar, local, national, local, and global cooperation, and it should be transdisciplinary. That I think is a strength of public administration, because public administration is multidisciplinary, and the importance of being agile. When you talk about agility, how can governments survive a poly crisis? It's a scenario where multiple global emergencies, climate change, inflation, pandemic. I will draw from the pandemic mostly in my short presentation. They overlap and entrench each other, and at the end of the day, you begin to ask, what happened? What is happening? And is government able to cope with this? Is government helping solve the problem, or is it deepening the problem? And of course, we all know that governance itself has problems in the 5 ways, including the accountability and aspect. When talk about accountability, people talk about the elephant in the room. In many countries, including our country, we have the problem of continued graft and corruption. And how can corruption how can corruption even deepen where we are now as far as the crisis is concerned? And we saw this, of course, okay. As I mentioned, Dr. Pansu Kim shared this, the ASPA, he talked about the polarized, unpolarized, unthinkable, and of course, uh, um, metamorphic, it continues to change, and of course, overheated. And it's also VUCA. The whole idea is, as mentioned earlier, it's about coordination across, and I think Agus also mentioned this, Dr. Agus, the importance of coordination across central, regional, local, and community. So when you talk about adaptive governance, it is national, local, it is also local, and equally important at the global level, the importance of agility. Central guidance, the role of national government. Does the national government have a strategy? That is very important. But is it being done at the local level? So this aspect of agility within the context of coordination, and this can be applied in crisis management, policy innovation, and of course, digital governance. Of course, we all know about the impact now of digital governance, and I'm sure that all of us around the room have been talking about are aware with the impact of AI. So what are the features, if you may? What are the features, if you may, of adaptive governance? No? We talk about the importance of, when we revisit public. This is, I think, will be the key of my discussion, and I'll be done in about 4 minutes. I promise. Iterative learning, always listening. We use the so-called feedback loop. All of us in this room have heard about the systems analysis, input, conversion, output, but the most important there is feedback. What is the role of feedback? Listening, and adapting and changing and reforming. And that is agility comes in. It cannot be business as usual because things are rapidly changed. Point, iterative learning. It continues. It's spiraling going upwards. Those of us who have been participants in this program at GRIPS in Japan, we talk about the importance of phronesis. Phronesis is really iterative. We continue learning and learning. Number two, polycentricity. There are many centers. Power is distributed across multiple centers rather than just one top down. It's not top down, it's bottom up. No? So that's what we call, I guess, the importance of polycentricity, several centers, and redundancy is a virtue. In traditional public administration, say duplication, we have to change. No, at one point, duplication and redundancy does work. All of us, of course, are familiar with the airplane. No, the plane usually has two engines, and that is what redundancy is all about. If one engine conks out, it continues to fly. So there's nothing wrong with redundancy, but that is positive redundancy. We should have built-in checks and balances into our system. And that is, I think, at the core of flexibility and agility. And as I said that earlier, adapting, listening, and adapting the feedback loop. So the whole idea of adaptive governance is continuous reform, and this is where we guys in public administration come in, the importance of continuous capacity building. It cannot be business as usual. You've heard this before. And not for anything else, we did publish this some time ago when we talk about the importance of the so-called 5 E's in an A. And yes, we are in public administration. We are all managers, but equally important, it goes beyond that. Adaptability, we think of the poor. Adaptability, we think of the vulnerable. Adaptability, we think of the next generation. We think of our children. And we should always remember that we are only borrowing from them. We are simply stewards. And I think that's why that is at the core of adaptability and, of course, good old-fashioned ethics and accountability. Okay, almost there. So sometime back, pardon me for citing this, but we've been doing this for some time. We also wrote an article about 20 years ago, or less than, about for whom is public administration. So we wrote about this, that we questioned it. Because you can talk about public administration being efficient, you talk about reinventing government, you talk about right-sizing government, optimizing, but at the end of the day, one question that we should always ask is for whom? For whom? And I think I've mentioned it already, the importance of those in the margins, those the vulnerable, and that is very SDG, but equally important, the next generation. But equally important, if you look at this, I've already cited this. I like these pillars of the Chandler Governance Institute because they say these are all management aspects, no? From leadership, robust laws and policies, strong institutions, financial stewardship, attractive marketplace, and global influence. These are all within the context of the administration side. But at the end of the day, it should be to help people rise. And that is what adaptive governance all of, helping people rise within the context of better education, health, satisfaction in public services, personal safety, especially under the crisis, and environmental performance, and income equality. Income inequality and income quality, and of course, gender gap and non-discrimination. It's very, very important. So I think I like this Chandler governance framework, because all of us in the room have heard of the UNDP framework. We have the World Bank framework, how they measure governance, ADB, World Bank, even the CIA, etc., etc. They all have frameworks on how to measure governance. But this one is based here in Asia, and I think it's a good one. I think we should all explore this. And my students and I, we continue exploring this. In fact, like I said, we brought them, our friends from Singapore over, and we even went to Singapore to learn this. So adaptive governance is all about, all of us have heard about the Asian bamboo. The Asian bamboo is a metaphor, no? So it's all about being flexible. So when you talk about adaptive governance, horizontal scanning, we look at the entire area, not only the trees, but the forest. This is where at one point we talk about foresight, futures thinking. My friend Dr. Lisan Perantecalino, whom many of you know, is the head of our futures thinking. We talk about the importance of foresight, looking forward, and we see the next crisis before it arrives. Number two, adaptive governance, public-private partnership. Government governance is not government alone. We should work with the private sector. And digital transformation, something is very, very important. We cannot avoid digital transformation, including AI. And as I said earlier, it should be strategic, it should be purposeful, but it should be flexible, like the Asian bamboo. As we know, the Asian bamboo, a tree snaps in a storm if it's rigid, but the bamboo really is quite flexible. And that's what adaptive governance. I'm almost there. So regional context in the ASEAN, Southeast Asia, in South Asia, we talk about hybrid regimes, and these are some of our major challenges. So let me just go very quickly to this. This is a book that we published recently about polycrisis, no? With Alican Baimano, a friend of our friend with Agus, and we had a chapter here that talks about public administration in an age of polycrisis, multinodal governance, as pointed out by IAPA to be multinodal. It's not only government, it's others. It could be government, it could be private sector, it could be business, it could even be the international community. It is multinodal. So this our friend, Dr. Baimando, I won't, because I know I'm running out of time. So we can draw experiences from the pandemic. Thailand, and I use the COVID because it's a good experience from it. In Thailand, during the COVID example, they used the Thai people's first doctors.
1 minute,
Participation
bro.
of people. Yeah, 1 minute.
One more minute.
How many more minutes, ma'am?
1 minute.
Okay, almost done. So Thailand, Indonesia, of course. Terima kasih. We have Thailand. When we talk about guiding principles, be innovative, go beyond your audience, no? In Indonesia, of course, Indonesia, your decentralized governance, the implication is decentralized requires strong coordination mechanisms. And I think we can draw from the condemn. In the Philippines, what I would like to highlight is the role of local leaders. The role of local leaders. You can have nice programs at the national level, but at the end of the day, it is helping people at the local. And of course, Vietnam, community participation. So all of this talks about participation, but equally important, that's agility, equally important, the role of leadership. So this is really comparative insight that talks about this within the context of coordination, central, local, national, local, decentralization, all flexibility. So of course, this can also be applied to digitalization and the artificial intelligence, something now that's really sweeping the entire discipline of public administration and governance. What we should always have good data. And even as we speak now, we're confronted by another crisis, the US-Iran war, the oil crisis, and the need for us to be aligned. Okay, so we already talked about the importance of this framework. This was at the United Nations. And at the end of the day, the importance of continuous learning, the importance of reform. And when we reform, we change structures. But guys, we change our mindsets, leadership, as I mentioned, and citizens. And this also as a framework used at the UNDP. I'm almost there, promise. So the changing mindsets is very, very important. And finally, to conclude, what is multinodal governance? It talks about in Southeast Asia, central authorities provide the framework, leadership and direction. Frontline local governments implement policy flexibility, and community actors engage in decision making. And the polycrisis requires adaptive, collaborative, and technology enabled in Southeast Asia, experience demonstrates the importance of agility, cooperation, and knowledge sharing. And knowledge sharing, which is what we're doing for future crises. We will have more crises in the future. And of course, the global perspectives is very, very important. We just don't work within the confines of us, but we talk about the importance of globalization, thinking global and local. So it is iterative, as I mentioned, listen, listen, listen. It is polycentric, enable people participation. It is redundancy. The old efficiency framework is not okay. We just should visit, learn, and learn and learn, and continuous reform and capacity building, which is why we're here. So at the end of the day, it is VUCA, from volatility to we provide the vision, uncertainty to understanding, complexity to clarity, ambiguity. So it's still VUCA, but IAPA leads the way in providing vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. That's why we're here today, to be able to address the poly crisis. So I'll end by saying, hey, I hope we can continue this discussion when I'll see you guys in Vietnam again. With that, terima kasih banyak, and I'm sorry I went a bit over time. Maraming salamat po. Terima kasih banyak. Thank you, Aika.
Terima kasih, Prof. Wow, such a great, insightful presentation. Thank you. And what we can highlight from Prof. Alex is that who actually adaptive government and whether we're ready to adapt to the early crisis. And collaborative and adaptive governance is a key for the aspect of agility in the context of coordination supported by digital government, I think. And the ASEAN bamboo is very interesting, bro. It's very flexible, yeah, and we should follow that direction. Thank you very much again. And now we move on to the second presenter by Dr. Lal Tansangasi, PhD from the India. Dr. Lal Tansanga is a senior academic and researcher in the field of public policy and governance from Mizoram University, India. He earned his doctorate in public administration from the same university, specialized in governance resilience and public policy in South Asia. Dr. Latan Sanga has been actively involved in various international collaborative research projects, focusing on how governance systems adapt to cross-border crises, including climate change, health emergencies, and social political instability. Before joining Mizoram University, Dr. Latansa has served as a key leadership role at Mizoram Christian College, as well as vice principal and head of department. And his scholarly work focused on public policy, governance structure, and institutional adaptation. His perspective is essential to our understanding of how governance adapt to an era of crisis. And the screen is yours, Dr. Latansa. You have 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. A very good morning to one and all. I would like to thank the IAPA webinar series for inviting me today. It's a privilege to be present here. I'd like to thank my good friend, Professor Agus, for giving me the opportunity. Thank you so much, sir. Dr.
Yes.
Oscar has been very communicative and very helpful. And it's good to see our good friend, Dr. Alex, as well, and everyone else on the board. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I would like to share some, yes, maybe, let me just check my files. I have, yeah, I hope you can access my slide now.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yeah, it's on the way. It's clear.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, I can see now. Yes, thank
Can you
you.
access my slide now?
Yes.
All right. Before I would like to illustrate a small case study from India, so that maybe it will also be helpful for people who are across the globe. Before I start my case study, I would like to mention a few points. And I believe the current system of governance, which is run on the institutional framework of bureaucracy, which is robust yet very rigid in its approach, does not live up to the test against the tide of uncertain and unpredictable crisis. The bureaucratic system of governance is too slow and inflexible to navigate and adapt to the changes brought forth by the interconnected global crisis. As a result, our bureaucratic system of governance cannot absorb the shocks and repercussions of the ever-changing challenges in our globalized world. Adaptive governance is all that bureaucratic governance is not, I believe. In other words, the essential elements of adaptive governance are mostly contradictory to the elements of bureaucracy. For instance, adaptive governance embraces flexibility and bottom-driven solutions, while bureaucratic governance has rigidity in the form of strict adherence to rules and procedures with hierarchy-driven
Apologize,
solutions.
Prof. The slide is not
Yeah.
moving. The slide is not
No,
moving.
I will move the slide. Let me just make an
Okay.
introductory. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
This is
Thank you.
just,
Yes.
yes, thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah. I
Thank
would
you.
like to have some introductory remarks. So I believe that adaptive governance is all that bureaucratic governance is not. And adaptive governance is a system of, as we all know, governing by learning and adapting to the rising uncertainties, by being able to quickly fine-tune our policies to survive and navigate uncharted courses, and also to absorb shocks resiliently, which is the reason why the concept and significance of adaptive governance becomes the center of administrative discourse today. And if we look into the elements of adaptive governance, there are certain key elements, as Professor Alex has mentioned, like flexibility and responsiveness, and also sensitivity to changing environment. The current dispensation or governance system has to be sensitive enough to the changing environment. And of course, polycentric governance, which is a specialized multiple decision makers, different levels. And apart from the decentralization, for generating decentralized knowledge is also an essence or an element of adaptive governance. And as the previous speaker has mentioned, robust and continuous feedback mechanism or feedback loops is something that we cannot do without if we are to if we are to follow the concept of adaptive governance. And also elements like reliable data systems and enhancing the capacity of public organizations and agencies, and participation and collaboration of all stakeholders, as well as trust and social capital. I believe these are the essential elements of adaptive governance. So where I come from in India, we have many challenges in this global scenario. I believe in the present global scenario, most countries facing issues with adaptive governments on two fronts, especially these days, situations where we need to solve the problem of over-reliance on oil and gas supplies to fine-tune our governance systems to face possibilities and challenges in relation to the rapid development of AI technology. The question is, how do nation states adapt ourselves when our oil and gas supplies are choked by tensions and war in which we are not involved? How can our governance system address the issues locally and nationally? So the world is in a transformative mode towards green energy, but nevertheless, our over-reliance on fossil fuel is far from over. I believe in this situation or the current context of global scenario, IAPA has rightly chosen the topic of adaptive governance. And I would like to share some slide on how in India, the cyclone disaster management case, how the cyclone disaster was managed in the state of Odisha. I'll move my presentation from here. In 1999, we have a super cyclone in Odisha. Odisha is situated in the Indian coastal state in the Indian coastal state. It is an Indian coastal state on the eastern belt, which is highly vulnerable to cyclones. 1999, the state of Odisha witnessed over 10,000 deaths because of the super cyclone, where millions were affected due to lack of institutional coordination, weak warning systems, and community engagement. This impact has triggered a governance reform based on the lines of adaptive governance. The institutional response after the cyclone impact was that the existing disaster framework was strengthened by creation of Odisha State Disaster Management Authority, which start to focus on preparedness and proactive steps. And there is an element of polycentric governance in which there are multiple stakeholders or multiple decision makers. Right at the top was IMD, which is Indian Meteorological Department, and we have the state government, and we have the local administration, and we have the NGOs and volunteers. I believe this is the part where the essence of adaptive governance comes into play, polycentric governance. And also there was a mechanism for feedback loops. There was a review done by the state government after every disaster to improve the governance systems. In 1999, as you can see, we have the super cyclone in 1999 caused over 10,000 deaths. But after the governance reform based on the line of adaptive governance, in 2013, we had another cyclone called Phylin. Phylin cyclone, the mortality rate was almost zero. It was less than 100 because they have the Odisha state government has adapted in 2013. And also in 2019, another cyclone struck the coastal state of Odisha, wherein the mortality rate was almost minimal. So these are the results of adaptive governance followed by Odisha state government in the management of cyclone disasters. And if you can look at into the evacuation scale, cyclone evacuation scale, in 1999, the evacuation program was pathetic. There was, as you can see from the graph, there is stark contrast between the evacuation scale in 2013 cyclone and 2019 cyclone. So after following adaptive governance, the Odisha government has managed to increase the scale of evacuation so as to reduce the scale of mortality. And then the key adaptive features that we can learn from this is that Odisha state government were governing by learning, which is the essential element of adaptive governance. They were learning from the past events. And also another important feature of adaptive governance is the community participation. They started to train local volunteers and get them prepared and ready for the next cyclone. They started to build cyclone shelter management, which is not only built but managed by the communities and also generate large-scale public awareness campaigns. And another feature of adaptive governance here in the management of cyclone, they make use of technology by installing early cyclone warning systems. So, and also essentially the polycentric governance is established, as we have mentioned before. And the outcomes is drastic reduction in deaths, improved resilience, and global recognition. This is a small case study to illustrate the idea of adaptive governance being used by the Odisha government. Secondly, I would like to briefly mention the COVID-19 pandemic response in the Indian state of Mizoram. This is the state where I come from. If you look into an Indian map, the state of Mizoram is in the northeastern corner of India, bordering Myanmar, and it has unique socio-political setting which became essential governance assets during the pandemic. So the Mizoram society is a well-knitted society, high social cohesion, and strong presence of community institutions. And there is also a strong presence of influential civil society groups. These are the basis on which the governance rely upon to manage the COVID-19 response. And we also have the case of polycentric governance is being exhibited here. We have the state government of Mizoram, we have the district administrators, and we have local councils in every locality of the urban areas. We have village councils in every locality of the rural areas. And we also have church-based organizations. Apart from all this, one of the major assets is the presence of institution by the name of Young Mizo Association, or YMA. So multiple stakeholders as well as multiple decision makers are present here in every stage, in all levels. So we have a case of polycentric governance here. The adaptive features are decentralized decision making at every stage, as I've mentioned, for decentralized knowledge, and a rapid coordination across multiple levels, and the blending of the formal and informal institutions. These are the assets and adaptive features in our fight against COVID-19 pandemic. And another feature of governance that is being exhibited here is the bottom-up system, which is community-led governance. The main role at the grassroots level was played by the YMA, the traditional institution. The YMA enforce strict quarantine rules. They manage supply of essentials. They monitor entry and exit of the state boundary. And apart from the traditional institution, we have the role of local councils. The local councils updated records of locals entering the state, establishment and supervision of quarantine facilities. These are the classic elements of adaptive governance that has been played. And also a very important element of adaptive governance, I feel, is social capital, which is a means of cooperation. We have a strong societal discipline, which is enforced by the traditional institution here, the YMA. And once these societal discipline are enforced by traditional institution, which has respect across society, there is minimal resistance to restrictions and quarantine orders, which in turn generate the culture of collective responsibility. And we also have trust between the state and civil society organizations. If adaptive governance has to be enforced or being used, the essential element will have to be a level of trust between the state and multiple stakeholders or the civil society. So I believe the concept of adaptive governance will have to essentially have trust between the state and civil society organizations. Lastly, we have resource mobilization and feedback loops. The community donations and volunteerism, donations from community and volunteerism was present. Local production of masks and other essential products, and the charge-based organizations come into play by providing quarantine facilities in the charge premises. And as these resources are mobilized, there is also finally a feedback in the form of continuous revision of standard operating procedures and drawing lessons from other states, like the Indian state of Kerala, to be specific. And after this continuous feedback loops, there is adjustments from district to district. There is no blanket policy for the entire state, depending on the situations. So I believe these are the essential elements which have been exhibited in our fight against COVID-19 pandemic. And I hope that something can be learned out of my presentation, that some lessons can be drawn across the globe. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the Golatan Sanga. For the great presentation, and I can highlight the key for adaptive features is learning from the past, yeah, the Latansha, especially from the India COVID-19 response, and then community participation as well as the social capital. And thank you again. We now move on to the third presenter, Indri Aprilti, SEP, MBA, PhD. Dr. Indri is a scholar at the intersection of business, politics, and governance. She holds a PhD in international management from the University of Agder, Norway, and served as both senior researcher at the Norwegian Institute of International Affairs, as well as assistant professor at Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. From 2021 to 2024, she served as an expert staff at the Office of the Vice President of Indonesia, advising on bureaucratic reform and public sector human resources experience that grounds her scholarship in the reality of governance. She is also a recipient of British academic recognition as a Promises Woman Early Researcher in Southeast Asia. Dr. Aprilianti will bring rare rigorous policy insight and global perspective to the study of adaptive governance. Please welcome Dr. Indri Dwi Aprilianti, and you have 20 minutes, Dr. Indri. Silakan.
Thank you, Prof. Ika. Terima kasih banyak. Let me share my PPT. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Indri Dwi Aprilianti. Today, I'm going to share or to discuss about the paper that we just published recently, and the title of the paper is about explaining Indonesia failed energy transition. I think we have discussed about it earlier before the webinar started. So we want to basically what we did, we tried to map the power and support for decarbonization among government institutions and actors. So here's the paper. The authors are, there are three of us, me from UGM, and also Mas Diwangkara Bagus Nugraha from UGM and UIA, Norway, and also Indra Overland from NUPI. And it has been published in Energy Research and Social Science approximately a week ago. The reason on why we delve into this study, because we've been puzzled and also confused about the actions of Indonesian government, but also at the same time to see how the action of the Indonesian government, the commitment that they have built, haven't been followed, but by substantive and significant effort. Like, for example, we know that Indonesia becomes one of the world's largest emitters. And the president, since 2017, for example, has pledged more serious commitments to fight the carbon emission. For example, by setting up the net zero target by 2060, and also try to reduce 43% of carbon emission by 2030. But what the funny thing is that is happening, that the Indonesian government keeps adjusting the target that they have made, simply because they couldn't achieve the target and the goal that they have met themselves. So we can see that year by year, the Indonesian government reducing the number of the target simply because they couldn't achieve it. And it's also very interesting to see it as as a phenomenon, because not only the government couldn't achieve the target that they have made, but also we can see sort of like a performative action made by the Indonesian government. So we know that the progress remains slow, very inconsistent. People may say that it is basically like a policy failure, but also at the same time, we recognize that the Indonesian government did some policy reversals. Like they said that they want to, for example, that they want to increase the renewable energy sources for the electricity, but they keep delaying and postponing the renewable energy projects. But also at the same time, they allowing the firms to build coal-fired power plant, or PLTU in Indonesian terms, in so many industries, such as nickel industry. So it's about that the government being, very trying to be like a greenwash or kind of actor, make a performative action, symbolic commitment, people may say, but at the same time, they continue to expand on the use of coal, especially for the captive plants. And that's basically something that we want to delve deeper, why we started this study and then published this study. And then the gaps of the research is that we are aware that most of the literature discussing about climate policy, the energy transition, the decarbonization, they oftentimes emphasizing the structure dimension of this issue, or they emphasizing the technical factors of the issue, or they emphasizing the economic dimension of this issue. Very limited discussion that basically trying to emphasize the role of the state or the role of the government that contributes to the delay or the fail of the energy transition. So if we want to see and we want to, we want to look at all this literature, they mostly emphasize the financial constraint that the government has, or the government has very limited fiscal space, or they don't have enough ability and resources to do some of substantive energy transition. We also can see some of the literature talking about technological and infrastructure challenges, or most of the discussion or papers, they also emphasize the role of the private sector incumbents that try to delay or block or shape the outcomes of the climate policy. However, most of this literature, whenever they try to see the government as an actor, they perceive the government as a single actor, coherent actor with unified preferences, which is very funny because we know that the government consisting of multiple actors, right? Like even in one ministry or even in one institution, we know that the government itself consisting of different divisions, different directorates. And these people, these government officials working in different divisions or different directorates, you might say, they have different political power, they have different structural power, they have different stances towards decarbonization. So in this how to say it, in this cluster of discussion, we see that the state itself oftentimes treated as a coherent, unified actor or single actors. And by having this kind of perspective, the consequence is that the studies or the scholars avoid or even overlook the internal conflicts and power struggles that are emerging in the government institutions. And another gaps that we are trying to fill in is that we try to rethinking the incumbents. It's very interesting to see that these papers, mostly in climate policy or energy transition, they oftentimes treat incumbent as a firm, like like nickel firm, coal firm, oil and gas firm, all these firms coming from agro extractive industries, for example. They try to block or challenge or object the climate policies. And very limited study that try to focus on the role of the government as the incumbent. So in this study, we also try to expand the list of the incumbents themselves. We try to treat that the ministries and regulatory agencies, state-owned enterprises, political actors, such as presidents and ministers, are also another incumbents. But what we didn't only expand the list of the incumbents, but we also tried to engage the audience or the readers of the paper to think about it more. That the government, when they act as a gatekeeper, when they act as an incumbent, they have resources, they have authority, they are in the system that can shape the outcome of the climate policy. They can redirect the outcome of the energy transition and decarbonization. So the government, when they become the incumbents, is not just the common incumbent. They have everything, the resources, the mandate, the authority to shape the direction of the energy transition or climate change or decarbonization, which makes this study even more interesting for us. And the research question that we have in this study is that we want to see how do internal power asymmetries and conflicting policy preferences among Indonesian government actors sustain carbon-intensive development pathways. So rather than we are looking the reasons on why the energy transition is failed, outside of the state, we are trying to see inside of the state. So what are the reasons on why this energy transition that has been backed up by serious commitments basically being failed, at the end of the day. So for the theoretical foundation, we are leaning on to different concepts and theories. First, we use regime resistant concept to give us some foundation of knowledge about how systems stabilized by rules, institution, and also vested interests, and how incumbents actively defend the status quo. So when we talk about the regime resistance, it's not about the structure that it reinforces the path dependence, but it's also about how the incumbents, with the power that they have, with the resources that they have, they can mobilize the resources to actively defend the status quo. We also lean on toward the historical institutionalism theoretical lens, in which we believe that the change itself is gradual, contested, and path dependent. And we also use the concept of multi-level perspective, but we emphasize the political perspective of this concept by thinking that these incumbents who serve the role as gatekeepers, they use power, and because they use power and because they basically compete with another actors, we also can see that the state itself or the government itself as the political avenue for these different actors basically have these political struggles to influence the policy. So the reason on why we lean on toward this different concept and theory, because we want to give, sort of like the foundation of thinking and knowledge to the audience that the state consists of multiple actors with competing interests and also unequal power. For the methodology, we use qualitative, but we use, multi-methods approaches. We analyze the policy document, we analyze different documents, from the government, the national plans, the regulations, tactical strategies. We also did some elite interviews, if I can say that, because why we say elite interviews, because I interview high-ranking officials in the government, like the deputy assistant, the director, and so on and so forth. We also interview and had some discussion with the legislative members, with the executive in state-owned enterprises, and so on. So we basically have this discussion and interviews with those who have the power to make decision. We also did some data confirmation and data clarification with the environments, with the NGOs, with the think tanks, with the academic through workshop and focus group discussion. We just want to ensure that the data that we have collected and also the way we understand the data and analyze the data is basically representing the true phenomenon that is happening in Indonesia. So here it is, the picture or the figure of the data collection processes and data analysis processes that we did with different actors to ensure that the data that we present in the paper is basically very robust. And the result that we have, the data that we have, then it inspires us to make this matrix, this 3x3 matrix, in which we have two different axes here. As you can see, Bapak and Ibu, we have vertical axis that represent the political power or the institutional power. And we also have horizontal axis that represents the stance of the government towards decarbonization or their orientation towards decarbonization. And you can see here, the gatekeepers, those who are the most powerful, are those who also object the climate policy, those who are objecting, the energy transition and decarbonization. And we also have the supporters, those who support the climate policy, the decarbonization and energy transition, but unluckily, they also have the least of power compared to other actors. So we sense, or we basically from this, we can see the inverse correlation between power and decarbonization policy orientation amongst these government institution and actors. If you are really aware of what I have said, I use both terms. I use the term institution, but I also use the term actor. Basically, the reason on why I use both of the terms, because if you can see, we're not only specifying the name of the institution like Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources or so on and so forth, but we also try to identify the actors within this government institution, whether they oppose or whether they support the climate policy, decarbonization, and energy transition. Hence, you can see the name of the minister, you can see the name of the person. You also can see the different divisions under similar ministry can be positioned in different typologies. So that, you know, the defined grain that we are trying to pursue to give more in detail information to our readers. Here are the findings of the study. I have mentioned about the key actors, those who are powerful but oppose the climate policy, the decarbonization, and some of the actors are the president, who has this agenda setting authority and more, you know, more authority on whatnot. We also have Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. We also have Ministry of Finance, PLN, and it's very interesting to see that their logics are mostly about how they prioritize growth, how they prioritize the energy stability, how they prioritize the energy affordability, and they also have very serious fiscal concerns about the decarbonization cost and effort. They oftentimes say that if anything that requires us to put more money on this whatever effort or processes that we want to put to envision, you know, the energy transition, that's something that we cannot do. And it is driven by so many reasons, such as, for example, you know, I think we Indonesian people already knew about this, how most of the chunk of the government budget are being allocated to MBG or freelance, you know, for the students. And we also see how the supportive actor who support the climate policy, they have limited power. But not only that, not only identifying the institution and actors and making typologies and also putting them in different boxes and typologies to see, you know, how powerful they are, how supportive they are towards decarbonization. We also try to capture the contributing factors that basically how to say it, like that basically deteriorates, you know, this situation. And we sense that there has been fragmentation emerging in Indonesian government institution. No single authority leading decarbonization. The president, who has the highest power in Indonesia, they oftentimes supporting the economic growth, even when it means that they have to increase the number of coal-fired power plant, they have to increase the deforestation because they keep giving the permits for the extractive industry, including also the palm oil industry. We also see how this, you know, institutions and divisions and directorates, they have overlapping mandates. They also have coordination gaps. And how we can see that there's a weak involvement across sectors in the government. And when we interview one of the high government official in planning agency in Indonesia, they said that, well, we try to support the decarbonization, but if the president and if the minister, they don't like it, and they, you know, they try to put more emphasis on economic growth, we don't have any power left, you know, to basically to enforce another government institutions to follow the commitments that the Indonesian government has made, you know, towards the decarbonization. So that's the reality. And we also try to capture the mechanisms of resistance that are coming from these government institutions and actors that oppose the decarbonization effort. For example, the government oftentimes use this selective pursuit of policies. So they basically make a policy or instrument nominally support energy transition, but are implemented in ways that preserve carbon intensive structures. So for example, PLN is a electricity provider, is a state-owned enterprise, the sole electricity provider in Indonesia. Just want to give some context to non-Indonesian audiences here. So for example, PLN conducts renewable energy tenders, but implementation remains weak and many planned auctions do not materialize. So again, this is something that you can see as part of the performative action that has been carried out by Indonesian government. There's also symbolic commitment where this high profile pledge is not being followed through by substantive action. Like the government has repeatedly pledged to accelerate renewable energy development and reduce reliance on coal, but it has not reformed PLN business model or addresses its fragile financial structure if they want to reform and if they want to, give more opportunities and spaces for renewable energy. We also see some cases where interministerial veto points also emerge during the decision making where the second most powerful actor in this during Jokowi period, for example, Luhut Bin Panjaitan, he has this veto power to say go or no go to different policies, and we see that really block or even delay some serious climate policies in Indonesia. So the core argument that we want to bring in our paper is that decarbonization outcomes, the climate policy outcome, the energy transition outcomes are not just technical, but they're shaped by internal step dynamics. And when I say internal step dynamics, it refers to power asymmetries that emerge in the government institutions. It's about institutional fragmentation that reduce the coherence amongst the government institution. It's about competing policy logics, but it's also about political short-termism that exists within political actors and political institutions in Indonesia, which reinforces, all these contributing factors that I have mentioned before. So the result is resistant to decarbonization is not external, but it has been actively produced within the step itself. And what are the policy implications then? Well, this is the most difficult part of the paper though. I think one of the reviewers also mentioned to us that what should we do then? Okay, we recognize all these barriers and challenges. So what we should do to move forward, to make Indonesian government move forward with this, more friendly and more serious climate policy or energy transition and so on. So we believe that this financial support like JATP alone is not sufficient. JATP has limited impact without institutional change. And we also believe that institutional incentive in Indonesia remain misaligned because powerful actors prioritize growth and also stability. We also believe that fragmentation that emerges in government institutions weakens implementation. So what are needed are stronger cross-institutional alignment, more consistent political commitment, and clear leadership and coordination. And the conclusion of this study is the slow progress or the failure of Indonesian energy transition, if we want to say it more boldly, is fundamentally a political issue. It's not a technical issue alone, it's not solely an economic issue. So if you want to understand and address decarbonization challenges, we need to look not just at policies or technologies, but at the political structure that shapes them. Thank you very much. I think that's all. And this is a closing statement coming from myself that the crisis is still very much ongoing. Unfortunately, the policy failure did not end with this slide. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Indri. Very important topics, yeah. Here you mentioned how fragmentation and no single authority really to say on Indonesia, yeah, Dr. Indri. And overlaying mandates, as well as coordination gaps that make weak enforcement across sectors in Indonesia is very interesting to be addressed. Thank you again. Everyone, we now come to the question and answer after the three presenter have giving us a very insightful information as well as sharing their articles, journal, and research. Now I will invite everyone to give a question. You can chat as well as raise your hand up. Please include your name and affiliation and specify which speaker your question is directed to, so we can have a very interesting discussion. Silakan,
Excuse me, Cucu, untuk question. Cucu,
Cucu, ya, monggo Bapak.
I would question to Mr. Alex. Mr. Alex said that focal volatility to tuna, turbulence, uncertainty, innovation, and ambiguity. As we understand that the government, the system, right now is already established. And as we understand that the regulations are static. The dynamic governance, we call it that able people, able process, agile process, thinking ahead, thinking again. As we understand that the leadership is more important about the policy policy to taking the policy. My question is, Mr. Alex, how do we take it that the static system or policy, and then as we understand that leadership are here, and then we need to the agile system or agile planning or agile anything, and then agile we cannot implement it because we have status the policy, and then is it possible for us to create for the hybrid policy, which is status regulation and agile system?
Sure.
And then we understand that the leadership, transformational leadership, is it we need to transform in how to adapt about the situation, geopolitics, geoeconomic, and everything. Is it possible to implement it about the hybrid system, hybrid policy, or everything? Thank you, Mr. Alex.
Yeah. Think you
Shall I
can
answer?
answer straight away, yeah, Prof? Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
I think that's a good question, an excellent question. In fact, I was monitoring, of course, the chat box and the conversation between and among ourselves. And number one, it's a paradox. The bureaucracy founded on hierarchy, high stability, professionalism. So by itself, the classic Bavarian bureaucracy is there to provide stability and continuity. And do these principles work against, as you said, it being agile? Because at the end of the day, one has to recognize that the context always changes, which is what is happening right now. The question is, how can the bureaucracy that is founded on traditional Bavarian principles be able to adapt to these changes? And you're so right. You're talking about hybrid. And I think it should, which is why over the years you have different models looking at how government should change. No, you talk about reinventing government, reengineering government, new public management, and recently we now, as we're talking, you have adaptive governance, dynamic governance, and now there's this new concept they're calling it positive governance. How can be more proactive? So certainly, I agree with you. Maybe hybrid is right, no, wherein we talk about it being flexible at the same time not losing sight of the fact that at the end of the day, you have to have institutions, you have to have strong institutions and strong structures. How does one adapt this? And the presentation of Dr. Lal and also our colleague from Indonesia also talked about this. You have the flood, you have this cyclone, and as Dr. Lal mentioned, at one point, too much bureaucratic procedures. And of course, our last presentation, I'll shut up after this, we talk about why Indonesia was unable to cope with this. And you talk about the problem was political. So where does that leave us? See? So we in public administration are left without answers, or sometimes are we relevant? So if we say it's political, so what should we do about it? That is where this so-called people in governance, people in public administration should get engaged. We cannot remain neutral, I think. We have to get involved because if you leave it to the politicians alone, nothing will happen. And I think the last presentation talked about it being political, and I think I'll just the importance of elite capture. I think you also mentioned about the role of leadership and it being it being path dependent. But if we look at it from path dependency, question, and I would like to argue for this, public administration must not be neutral. That's why you talk about it being hybrid. But that goes against the very ideology of public administration being professional, very neutral. So what do we do? That's why we're here today, questioning our discipline. Are we still relevant? Are we the problem or are we the solution? Terima kasih. But thank you for that question, sir. Sir
Thank you.
Chucho.
Sorry, I just want to continue. Hybrid means fragmentation about how to regulate. Is it what we call it from Ms. Indri? We need so many fragmented regulation and everything and resources. Thank you.
That is, if I might just jump in, but that is where this good old-fashioned management comes in. We cannot be very agile and say, do this. That's why, how do you manage it within the context of we focus on the vision, you focus on Indonesia. What is your vision, Indonesia 50-50 or something like that? And then how do we move towards that direction? And that is where management and non-flexibility comes in. But also, since we're all humans, since there's leadership, since there's politics, we have to change also. That's why we talk about the importance of changing our mindsets. It's not an easy task, definitely. But for me, at the end of the day, it's the kind of leadership that we've had. Leadership does matter, which is for me very, very important in what you mentioned, hybrid kind. You have strong rules, strong institutions, yet you have to have the strong leadership that has the vision. That's one reason why many nations have failed, because of very bad leaders.
Thank you, sir.
Terima kasih.
Oke, thanks a lot Prof. Alex dan Pak Cucu ya, sangat bagus tadi diskusinya. Sekarang kita next move on to Bu Risma Niswati from UNM. Time is yours, Bu, silakan.
Okay, thank you so much, moderator. I'm Risma Niswati from Universitas Negeri Makassar in South Sulawesi. I asked this question to all the presenter because I think it requires a comparative answer from all of you. As we know that adaptive governance emphasize learning, flexibility, collaboration. However, many public institutions remain path dependent and bureaucratically rigid. So, according to your research experience, what strategies have proven effective in transforming traditional bureaucratic governance into a genuinely adaptive governance system without undermining accountability? Even the speaker first one already mentioned about the Asian bamboo, but I think we still need deeply information, deeply explain about the what strategy we need. I think that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bu Rima. I think all presenter can address that. Who we want to start? Prof. Alex, you want to address first? And then
Maybe I'll
Dr.
let the others first and I'll be the last. Because I
Okay,
just,
okay then.
terima kasih.
Yeah, Dr. Indri and Dr. Lal Tansanga, do you want to answer this question?
Yeah. Dr. Lal Tansanga, do you want to answer the question first?
Ladies first.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because the person who asked is Bu Rismaya, a lady, so I try to answer your question, Bu. Well, it's very challenging discussion every time we try to engage discussions with government officials or even think tanks and NGO and academics to some extent. I always engage a discussion with them, discussing about or talking about what should we do then? What kind of structure that we need to move forward very significantly with decarbonization? And it's really interesting that they commonly and oftentimes mention about the centralization of the authority and of the rules and decision in Indonesia. So they say that not now, I think we need like an agency or whatever organization or institution that can make, how to say, like a central coordination amongst these diverse government institution and actors. They also mentioned that we need more strong or stronger political leadership to navigate these very wicked problems or challenging situation that we are facing as an impact of this climate change and everything. So it's interesting to see how these people, although they believe in decentralization, they also are aware that centralization is needed during this time, that they need stronger political leadership, they need centralization of authority and also decision-making process. But they also aware that inclusivity, which means that the society or people that live in local area also needs to be included in the decision making process by making some of the decisions to be more inclusive, to be more decentralized. I think the hybrid kind of structure here are needed, during this situation, and to basically to support this decarbonization process. But again, I think it warrants more discussion with public administration scholars that are here, in the webinar. Thank you, Ibu.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Latansa, you want to
Yes.
answer this question?
So I believe the question was how do we inject the element of flexibility and collaboration in the bureaucratic structure? Or, in other words, the questioner was asking us, whereas we emphasize the element of flexibility and collaboration, on the other side of the structure, bureaucratic structure is against this kind of elements. And in my presentation, in my introductory remark, I also said that adaptive governance is all that bureaucratic governance is not. So I think it is very contradicting. But I believe we have been using the bureaucratic structure for so long that I believe this will not be an easy task to be reversed. I don't think we can easily strip off the bureaucratic elements and inject flexibility and collaboration easily, because the world is so convinced that we have been using this structure for a long time. But what I do believe is that with the ever increasing success story of governance on the lines of adaptive systems, I believe there will be a gradual change as we move on. So we need to share success stories across the globe, which are dependent on adaptive governance. And as we move on, I believe these success stories will convince us that bureaucratic structure alone is not the answer now. So, but it will be a gradual phenomenon for me. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we need to highlight here that Yes, bureaucracy is the most rational form of organization. They often and tend to uphold the stability, but again, we have to gradually move to this adaptive governance, yeah, Burisman and everyone. Thank you.
Can
And
I
Prof.
say
Alex,
something?
yes, yes,
Yeah,
silakan.
I don't think we should romanticize adaptive governance, dynamic governance, collaborative governance. I mean, come on, these are all the same, if you ask me. At the end of the day, we have to ask for whom? For whom? And that question was asked. We asked that question in 2008. Then I was just getting this book of Fredrickson, one classics. No, he asked the same thing. 2010. He also asked the same question. For whom is social equity? So at the end of the day, it can be rigid. That's fine. That's why we are in management. Public administration is a science. There are certain rules. At the same time, there are certain things that should be flexible. So the first three, economy, we have to save money, efficiency, we have to take a target, effectiveness, that's fine. We should. That's why you have management principles. But what changes or what has to be flexible is the for whom aspect. Does it create more equity or does it worsen it? As Indri pointed out, is it, and also Dr. Lasam, is it really only for the politicians? That is where we should come in. The whole idea of elite capture is very dangerous here. That's why we have to ask the question of equity for whom? That's why we have to ask the question of equity. Is it for the poor? And for me, if it's about equity, something that's not really asked, we should ask what are the implications for the next generation, for our children. See? So, yes, we are flexible. No, yes, we are rigid yet flexible. That I think the first question of was it Dr. Chuchu who asked in the beginning, no? So I don't want to romanticize this. But yeah, you're so right. We have all these new jargonistic things. Adaptive, dynamic, positive. That's fine. Collaborative. But what are the fundamental principles? That's why public administration is a science. There are certain things that are classic, but there are certain things that must change. So I would not always be blown by fashion, because there are certain things that should not change, and one of which is at the end of the day, for whom is this all? And you need science to be able to do it, because if you are very very romantic, forget you have to do some science here. That is where the science of public administration comes in.
Okay, that is very interesting, Prof. Thank you very much. And I also open two more question from the audience. Pak Eka Putra Budianta has raised hand. Time is yours, Pak Eka. Before I'm reading the question from
Okay.
the... Yes, silakan, Bapak.
Thank you very much for the time given to me. My name is Eka Putra. I work in correctional institution in Indonesia. I am currently a doctoral student at the Universitas Terbuka. I am very interested in today's geopolitical issues. I would like to ask Prof. Alex Brillantes about the current multi-crisis situation. How do you see the global multi-crisis today, especially the oil crisis?
Sure.
Do you think it could lead to World War III, given the increasing use of unlawful force in many parts of the world? Thank you.
Well, I am not an expert in geopolitical, but certainly that we are really at the brink of this. But guys, if you remember, if you look at history, this almost happened. Many of you in the room were not yet born. 1962, the so-called Cuban Missile Crisis between the United States and Russia. And Russia blinked. I mean, say they had the missiles in Cuba aimed at the United States, and the United States blockaded it. No, so question. So many years later, we have the same situation now. Question: Who will blink? Who will blink at this point in time? And I think the deadline is about 4 days from today. But that deadline has been extended so many times by Trump. So many people, maybe he will blink again. No, but my point there is, so I've always the importance of leadership that is really rooted on a certain ideology, on a certain strategy, and that's where governance, adaptive governance. We know where we want to go, yet how do we move there? And I think that's very important, no? And I must say, Eka, no? In this room today, I have another guy. He also works in correctional. His name is Bernuel. He's a good colleague of mine at the University of Makati. He's also taking his doctorate. So I thought I just mentioned that. But the whole idea, again, let me go back today, is we're actually in the crossroads. We are in the crossroads right now, eh? So we don't know what will happen, but we are actually in the precipice, and that can happen. Suppose somebody blinks. Suppose somebody says, "Yes, I will release it." So, like I said, I'm not an expert, but we are actually there. And for me, a similar situation in history was the Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962. We were on the brink of a nuclear war again. Now we are there. I don't know. I don't know what you guys think, because at the end of the day, it's all about economics. At the end of the day, it's all about geopolitics. At the end of the day, it's about control. I mean, let's face it. It's about naked imperialism.
Okay. Pak Eka, do you have any comment or enough?
It's clear to me. I just want to dig more about Professor's opinion about this topic. Thank you.
Okay. For your PhD, ya. Thank you. Okay. Okay, now Pak Satya Widarma, you also raise hand up. Silakan Pak Sam. Are you there, Bapak Satya Widarma? Okay, I should now then reading the question, posting in the chat. Yeah, from Pak Andi ya, Pak Andi, what are the main preparations that can be made to overcome the global crisis? And how do you think national leaders,
Yeah.
especially in Asia, can act to save their countries from the global economic recession and the threat of the war? Thank you. Anyone want to answer? Either Prof. Alex,
Maybe
Bu Indri, or Mbak Latansya?
I think I will go first.
Okay.
This is something very exciting that we found in our study, Pak Subandi, that the problem is it's not solely, about the structure, but also about the agency. Hence, we say it at the end of the paper that the core argument that we made somehow enhance the historical institutionalism theoretical lens, because we say that this path dependence, or the continuation of effort to sustain status quo, is not only driven by the structure, the very everlasting structure that try to sustain a status quo, but also the conscience of the gatekeepers to produce the status quo itself. So it's both structure and agency. And I do believe that the agency that is performed by the gatekeepers or by the political actors that have the most power, who sit as the public leader in public sector institutions, can really shape the outcomes of the climate policy or decarbonization. So it's both of it. Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question to you, Dr. Indri?
Yeah.
Because
please go ahead, sir.
sorry, because your final question was, it is political, right? So what do we do about that? Do we have any leverage, if you may, if it's political? Do we have, in the US, they're talking about regime change. In Iran, they talk about Venezuela, right? So
Yeah.
if it's all political, what do we in governance, public administration, that's supposed to have rules-based institute, strong institute, what do we do? Do we just give up and say, well, you guys are there, I'll just wait for the next election? Or should you have a coup d'etat? Or, is it,
That's a good
What?
idea, sir.
No, no.
No, I'm just joking. Of course,
Yeah,
I'm
of
just
course, of
joking.
course.
But yeah, like I engage discussion with so many people, especially from the international donors, and also think tanks and academic. They say that I think one of the incentives that we can give, to support this business climate to be more thriving and to be more supportive toward
Yeah.
renewable energy is basically to make these oligarchs,
Yeah.
those who have power and resources and money, to be investing more on renewable energy. And we see some of the oligarchs in Indonesia have more business on renewable energy right now. It's not only about Yusuf Kala, but also another oligarchs. But it also comes with another consequence. And the consequence is if the oligarchs dominating the renewable energy market and industry, it means that more, smaller firms or other firms who are not owned by
Yeah.
the oligarchs couldn't thrive in this business environment. So it's something that is very challenging to be solved. But we also have another solution that we should provide incentives, to make this renewable energy or energy transition to be more enticing for the political leaders. Like if you are able to do this and this, we can give you more support, more money. But if you cannot do this, then we cannot give you anything. And it's really interesting. Every time we discuss with the decision maker, the high ranking officials in the government, they oftentimes mention that Indonesian government can move forward with the energy transition as long as we can get the money from the international donors. So there's a shifting of responsibility that emerged, in Indonesian government. We can do this, but we need your help. Otherwise, we couldn't do this. So I do believe that the political incentives
Sure.
and the awareness of the society can be, like the factors that can pressure, put more political pressure on the government.
That's so a setup of that's so interesting because that's exactly what's happening in the US now.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you've heard
With
of
the
the
No
million,
Kings, yeah,
the
with the
No
No King
Kings
protest.
March, people are there, but at the end of the day, millions of people march. But at the end of the day, who are those holding power? At the end
Yeah,
of the day, you have the support of what you call the oligarchs, the Elon
true.
Musks, and all. So what do we do? It's a conundrum.
Yeah,
What can we
true.
do about it? And of course, people in the bureaucracy have to follow what they're saying up there, right?
Yeah, yeah, true.
Thank you. But that's thank you for that very, very honest answer from Indonesia. I didn't expect that. Makes us feel better in the Philippines.
Yeah, Prof. In Indonesia, we still busy with how to fulfill the needs of the citizen, the corruption, etc. People like
Yeah.
not concerned about the carbon dioxide or anything. It's for saving environment. I think one of the explanation. Okay, thank you everyone. The time is 2 minutes only for question answer.
Speaker, may I
Oh, iya.
continue my question, Cucu? May I
Oke,
continue?
Silakan. Last question ya Pak Cucu, silakan.
Yes, thank you. I'm very interesting about the paper of Miss Dr. Indri. I find that your presentation about the fragmentation in regulation, in power, etc., and then political dilemma in the situation. So about the transformation bureaucracy in Indonesia, if the fragmentation, regulation, power, and everything, is it possible to the dynamic governments are established in Indonesia? Thank you.
Oh, yeah, this is a very difficult question to answer. There is a scope of or the limitation of study that we have done, of course, and the policy implications that we are talking about in the paper. We just solely mention about what kind of political incentive that we can do to support, to give more pressure on the government and so on. So we didn't really discuss about, whether this particular paradigm can exist or thrive in this particular in particular, government institutions or not. I think it requires more judgment and analysis from these honorable public scholars such as Professor Alex and also Dr. Glaud Pansanga. So I invite you to answer the questions. Is it possible, amid this situation and political dynamics and power struggles among government institutions, to dynamic government to be able to exist?
I think we are in a variation of identity crisis again. Where is public administration and governance in all this? How do we make ourselves relevant? That's why for me, at the end of the day, one fundamental question, what are we doing this for? For whom is this really? No? And that question was even asked of what's happening in the US right now. They're talking about the war. Hey, you are just simply stewards. You're simply stewards. The position is not yours. So going back to why do we, all of us in the room in public administration, have chosen governance and public administration as a vocation, as a career? Then that is our North Star, I think. Because if we're not familiar with that, then as you also point out, Ika, we have good old-fashioned corruption, elite capture, rent seeking. It's all there. It's the elephant in the room. But we in public administration never ever forget the last eight: ethics and accountability for whom? Somebody once said, even the US, if you want to get rich, do not enter politics. We in public,
interesting.
we will never get rich. And we don't want to get rich because we want to serve the people. That is where, service, serve the people is our ideology. It sounds so romantic, but we have to remain romantic.
But Alex, in Indonesia, if you want to get rich, you have to enter the politics.
Politics.
Well, that's exactly what I
That's the
said.
side in
How do we
Indonesia.
change our mindset? See? Exactly. That's what IAPA is doing. That's what our schools of public administration are doing. I know what you're saying because I'm on School of Public Administration in the Philippines, and they asked that question. What is your impact, you guys? You are teaching governance and you have so many corrupt people around. And that is really, we in governance, we in education have to be more reflective. What has been our impact? What have we done? See? Anyway, you're right. I'm glad you also raised that, my dear friend, Dr. Mulok.
Okay, everyone, I think the time for question answer is up. Thank you very much, everyone, for the very hot discussion, especially on the corruption and then the money and politics and the carbon.
KKN.
Yes, KKN. Okay, thank you. And now I invite all the speakers to have a 2 minutes closing statement for everyone. Prof. Alex?
Well, I think I've spoken too much, but our topic today was adaptive governance. One, I think we in public administration have a role, remembering why we are in public ad, remember the question for whom. And number two, when we talk about adaptive governance, we should remember the role of leadership. And this is of science, the role of national, local, international cooperation. That's science. The role of coordination between and among the silos. See? And of course, the third is, let's never forget, why are we in this? No? And of course, as I go back to what Noam Chomsky said, this is, we're facing existential threat. If not, we'll all be wiped out by our own faults. It's because of man that is destroying the environment. It's we ourselves destroying it. And what do we tell our the next generation? It is scary, but at the end of the day, that's what we are. We have to be held accountable. And that's what good governance is all about. Ethics and accountability. Terima kasih banyak.
Okay, thanks a lot, Prof. Alex. And now, Dr. Latansa, silakan. Please, time is yours.
Thank you. My humble observation and humble opinion with all of the discussion that we have listened today is that how do we practice adaptive governance in an era or situation where we still have the rigid bureaucratic structure? And also, in line with the presentation of Dr. Indri, when the political gatekeepers are not willing to implement or willing to practice adaptive governance, what do we do about it? My humble observation is that in order to practice adaptive governance, even when there is a impasse or block, or when there is a blockade by the political bosses or the bureaucratic hierarchy, I believe the element of adaptive governance, essential element, is to empower civil society and the citizens, so that they started to demand the idea of adaptive governance. And at the end of the day, essentially, it is the vote bank that counts for the political bosses. And in order to have an effective adaptive governance, we need collaboration with multiple stakeholders. And if the stakeholders are not being empowered or not aware about the advantages of adaptive governance, I don't think it will work out. In the case of the presentation by Ms. Indri, there is a blockade from the political bosses not to adapt to clean energy or something like that. But if the bosses are not willing to, we can empower the citizens and generate awareness and force them to do so, or else they might have to face the people's mandate in the next election, as you rightly mentioned. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Latansa. Now, Dr. Indri, silakan.
Thank
Thank
you, Ibu.
you.
I will give a very concise closing statement, reflecting you upon or drawing you upon the study that we have conducted, and also to be in aligning with Pa Alex and also Dr. Lalpan Sanga has mentioned about the adaptive governance and the challenges that comes within it. I think that the barriers and challenges whenever we talk about climate policy, climate change, and decarbonization are not just about policies or technologies. It's mostly about political structures, that shapes them. I think that's the closing statement. I hope it resonates with so many things that we are facing right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Alex, Dr. Latansa, and Dr. Indri. Thank you for the insightful presentation, discussion, as well as your energy to drive adaptable governments that respond to the society and current crisis. It is an honor to have you with us today. And distinguished participants, everyone from the IAPA and the speakers. Now, symbolic presentation of certificates to the speakers and moderator. I will kindly invite Professor Khairul Muluk as the chairman of IAPA to lead this session. The screen is yours, Prof. Muluk. Silakan.
Thank you, Prof. Ika. Uh, Mbak Safira ada sertifikat ya?
Ada Prof dari Miss Devara
Oke.
yang membantu.
Oke, Mbak Devara. For appreciation for all of the speakers, honorable speakers here, we will presenting the certificate for Professor Alex Vilantes, PhD. Thank you very much. This is not our last sessions, last webinar. This is many kind of the date. We invite you more, ya, Pak Alex. Terima kasih, Pak Alex.
Terima kasih, Mas Bro.
Yeah, thank you, Mas Bro. And the second one for Dr. Sanga. Dr. Sanga, Laltan Sanga. We call him as Dr. Sanga. Oh, Mbak Indri dulu. Mas Devara, Dr. Sanga for the second one. Thank you very much for Dr. Sanga. I remember this is first invitation for you in IAPA webinar series, ya.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, Dr. Sanga. Sanga means 9 in bahasa Indonesia.
Oh, is it? I see.
In Javanese, yeah, this is Sanga, the highest number, 9. Yeah.
Oh, even in our language, it means high. Sang means high.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sanga. And then the third one, last but not least, Mbak Indri, Dr. Indri Dwi Aprilianti. April mean she will have a birthday in this week, in this month maybe, ya. Is it right, Mbak Indri?
Betul sekali Pak, on Kartini's Day to be
Kartini's
exact.
Day, okay. We celebrate now, ya. Selamat ulang tahun, Mbak Indri.
Is that right?
No,
April,
it's still another
Happy
30
birthday.
days.
but this April. That's
This
April.
April,
yeah.
yeah, you're
It's in
right.
April.
Wow,
This
happy birthday.
Thank you so much, the early birthday celebration. Thank you. Thank you everyone.
Thank you, Mbak Indri.
Terima kasih banyak, Pak.
Materinya sudah di-share ya, Mbak Indri, ke peserta? Mbak Indri, materi sudah di-share ke peserta?
Oh, saya akan share lewat Mbak
Vira
atau
ya?
di sini nggih?
Boleh di sini, boleh.
Oke, baik, akan saya share di chat, Pak Muluk.
Oke.
Siap.
Karena di di catatan teman-teman yang lain sudah di-share ke publik, yang Mbak Indri yang belum.
Saya akan share juga papernya ya Bapak dan Ibu. Jadi
Oke,
paper dan juga
ya.
PPT.
So thank you very much, Mbak Indri. Thank you very much all the presenters, and the fourth certificate for Prof. Ika. Thank you, Prof. Ika.
Terima kasih, Bro.
Very good moderator. After this, we will have a policy brief for this webinar, ya. and hopefully will be delivered to the policymaker in Indonesia. But as Mbak Indri said, that always in public administrations, political matters, yeah. Political aspect is very important and influence or interfere public administration. Although in adaptive governance, we still face the political, I don't know, it's a political problem or political institution to apply or to put it into effect. But I think this is our effort to bring public administrations in order to facing our problems such as our policy crisis. Yeah, but as Alex Brilante said that every public administration have very good or very serious problems. It will challenge our identities. That's still our discussion until now. Yeah, but I think Indonesian situation not only in positioning in Southeast Asia, but in global crisis, we will face it. We please don't be. I think Indonesian's oil is problem too, Alex. So it is a big problem to us to bring our oil to Philippines. So we have to share our oil. Yeah.
That's why we have ASEAN. I don't know how ASEAN will work. See?
Yes. But
And we're hosting ASEAN this year. Maybe you should come over.
yeah, I think that's our problem, our big problem. Thank you very much for all presenters and everyone. See you on the next webinar. We will have webinar weekly here, and many other interesting topics will deliver to the public. Thank you very much, everyone. Nice to meet you. See you later. Yeah.
Terima kasih
Thank
banyak.
you. Thank you very
Sama-sama.
much, Prof. Muluk, Bapak Ibu. Before we leaving, we're gonna have a photo session, yeah.
Okay.
We apologize for anyone who asked question but unable to be gathered today. Before we take a picture, please everyone, can you turn on your video camera? Yeah. Yes. Okay, I will count down from 3. So that everyone ready? Tim IAPA, ada yang mau foto ya? Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Ada Farah
Yes.
atau Safira?
Kita juga ikut screenshot, Prof.
Oke, good.
Okay.
Makasih ya, Bapak
Okay,
Ibu
thank you
sekalian.
everyone. Yes, with that, then the IAPA webinar series on adaptive governance in era of global crisis has officially come to close, everyone. Again, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to all speakers, the chairman of the IAPA, Prof. Muluk, the organizing committee, and all participants for your time and attention. May the knowledge we have gained today benefit us in navigating the complexity of governance in the time of global crisis. Again, this is Prof. Ika, your moderator. I'm very sorry, signing off. Thank you and have a wonderful day ahead. See you in the next IAPA
Thank
webinar.
you, Prof. Ika.
Thank you, Dr. Ika.
Thank you, Prof. Alex.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Doc Brillantes. Bye-bye.
See you in Vietnam.
See you, Alex.
See you in
Thank you.
Vietnam. Terima kasih.
Alex,
See you in
I was
Vietnam, ya.
hoping to see you in America for ASPA, but my permission letter haven't been come up, so
Yeah,
I canceled.
yeah.
Oh my God.
I was there.
Okay. Yeah, it was a great event,
Yeah,
bro.
I thought I'd see you there, Dr. Ika. Okay, see you.
Yes. Thank you.
Maybe
All the best, bro.
Maybe Vietnam, it's nearer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Terima kasih, Prof. Mulu, Pak
Terima
Oscar.
kasih.
Thank
Bro
you.
Mulu,
Terima kasih,
terima
Bu
kasih,
Ika.
Oscar.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr.
Pak
Alex.
Herman, makasih ya. Bu
Bye.
Sri Mulyani, saya lihat tadi. Pak Cucu, makasih ya.
Terima kasih, Prof.
Terima kasih, Pak
Nata,
Cucu.
oke.
Terima kasih.
Mas Oscar, Pak Sekjen.
Ya.
Oke. Very good.
Oke, terima kasih Pak. Mohon izin live
Oke.
ya, Pak.
Oke.
Ya, Pak.